plugs here that we're going to install on this video. I know a couple videos ago I talked about these and where they're going to go on the board. So these are about 1 inch, just under 1 inch in diameter. So I have my 1 inch Forstner bit there on the drill press. And actually the depth of this bit is the same depth I need to go for these. I want to leave these about a 32nd or so above the surface of the board so I can sand that smooth. I think that's as low as I want to go on this one. And you saw me using the vacuum there. It's because I want to suck all the chips out. I don't want the chips to fall into the board. And as I drill these other holes, I'm actually just going to put tape over this so nothing falls in there. So that's the hole with the venting leash plug. You can see the crosshairs in there, and that's definitely exactly why I did my template one that I showed you in the other video. And here's the hole with just a standard leash plug. Now I hammered all my blocks underneath the deck, which is good. Good thing I did the measurements. And the reason I did 4 here is because I can put bungee cords and strap a cooler or a clothes bag or something on this when I go traveling. See that dark spot right there on that far side? That's actually a hole that goes into the middle of the board. Now if I was to fill this with epoxy in that plug, all the epoxy would actually drain into that hole. So what I've done is I've mixed some sawdust and wood glue, and I've created peanut butter. What I'm doing is I'm just using my finger and I'm filling those voids so that I don't lose any epoxy. Using my CNC machine, I created these jigs. This is for my router to follow out. I have a plunge router set up with a 1/2 inch plunge bit. So this is for the fin box on the bottom. That's going to go there. Here's some more templates. You'll see this on the other side. This is an extremely critical part of the build, so make sure you double check everything. There's a flange on this handle here. It's about a 1/16 inch deep. So I put the new jig up and I just routed this out. I probably didn't get it on video. Anyways, that's for this to sit down in. So now I'm just checking, and then I'm going to switch over to the other jig to dig the depth, the hole for this. I just put some green tape down there to try and protect the board as best as possible.
Just going to install the leash plugs here. There's plastic cover on there. That's to stop epoxy from going into that plug. Just add a little bit of epoxy there. Put the plug in, make sure it squirts out. It's not squirting out, so I add a little bit more epoxy. There we go. Now I put the weight on there to keep it down and use the paintbrush to clean it up. Now this next piece, this is like a hard putty, and what I'm doing is I'm mixing the two different putties there, is green and white, and I'm going to roll that into a small tube, sort of like the consistency of gum, and that's for the special air vent leash plugs. This picture there, I just form it on the outside of the vent hole, and then you push the plug right into that, and that's just to stop the epoxy from draining into your board. So it's just pretty much a break hole for the epoxy.
So what I've done here is I just filled this whole hole with epoxy resin. Then you put the handle in until the epoxy squeezes up, and you can see here the outline where it squeezes out, and then you just sand that smooth and then put some tape over there for the next layer. Same thing with all these plugs here, you just sand it smooth, put some tape over, and they're all the same. So it's getting a little hot in here. I had to close the doors. You want it to be nice and cool. Preferably do this in the evening, but I'm doing it in the morning, so what can you do? So you saw I applied everything with the paintbrush. I just like putting on paint, and I wanted a nice thin layer, make sure everything was nice and wet. Also, one thing here on the rails, if you get too much on there, it likes to create waves when the epoxy's starting to run, so that's why I just kept running up and down there with the paintbrush. And then just make sure there's no drips on the underside. It's easy enough to sand the drips off if there is any, but just save you some hassle.